Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the MetaManiacs Show. This is the show for and by trading card game maniacs. As usual, I'm your host, Dan, and today I am joined by Mike Piper.
Hey, everyone.
We have Jordan Syverson.
Hello.
And Kevin Kerrigan. Nice. Today, it's Halloween week, so today we're giving you guys our special Halloween Spooktacular for episode 13, which I didn't even realize was like lining up the way it did until just a few minutes ago. So,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Fantastic.
So today what we want to do is we're just going to talk about a variety of spooky TCG related things, from our favorite spooky themes in card games to horror stories of trading card game related activities. So, This was also recommended to us by Kevin, so I'm going to let Spooky Kevin and his Jason mask over there lead the way.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's probably the costume I'm most proud of. That is a full Jason face hood, and it was sweaty under there.
I imagine.
So I thought it would be just a fun idea in the spirit of the season, which Halloween is my favorite holiday for those who don't know, to talk about scary things related to card games. And one idea that I really liked is scary metas. A meta that for one reason or another that you just hated to play or just was a pain to deal with. And I thought about it for a while, and as far as just like the most absolutely oppressive, unfun meta that I've personally experienced, obviously I'm sure there's others that are worse, but for me personally, it was the Mecha Frieza format in Dragon Ball Super, which I want to say was around set 4, Mike, if I remember correctly.
Those were some dark times. They had a regional.
Mike's visibly scared.
500 people, 500 plus people in the regional, and like 400 plus ran Mecha Frieza. So no, it wasn't oppressive at all.
For those who don't know, I won't go into the specifics, but this was really, I think, the turning point for Dragon Ball, or it kind of for Super, that it turned into this really fast, really aggro, abusive, kind of like find an archetype, find a strategy, abuse the hell out of it. And basically, Mecha Frieza was the first leader that could consistently awaken on turn 1, and it basically got so bad that if you weren't running Mecha Frieza, you were losing. And I experienced it firsthand at Pro Play Games down in Miami, because I'm in Florida, so it's only like an hour away from me, had a super release event for Crossworlds, and that was right in the midst of Mecha Frieza. And I was playing my 17-18 deck, which I played from set 2 all the way until way past its prime, just because I really like that leader. And it wasn't just me, because I was playing a rogue deck, even other people playing other tier 1 decks, even other Mecha Frieza players, where it was honestly the least fun, worst experience I have had playing a card game, where every match was a miserable slog and everyone hated it.
So I take it that the mirror match between Frieza and Frieza was not super enjoyable.
Yeah, and also a lot of the cards used to build Mecha Frieza were kind of expensive, so it was also that barrier in front of it, which is where Dragon Ball really started having a lot of that. They eventually did errata Mecha Frieza, but by the time that happened, it was already old news, so it didn't really affect much. And like Dan said, Mike said, that big event that happened right around that time, it was just a Mecha Frieza nightmare.
There are a couple of elements that can contribute to a metagame being just terrible, right? It's one thing if a deck is the lion's share of the meta. That's like that in itself doesn't necessarily invalidate a metagame. But I'm gonna cite where some people may think this was a nightmare meta, but I really loved it. Was in Magic the Shards of Alara Zendikar meta, where Jund was the major deck that got played. Personally, I played Jund a lot then, and when I played a Jund mirror, I had an absolute blast, because you're just like casting things and they would cascade into other things. There's a lot of like randomness and just like kind of flip the coin, like hope I get the good card here that I need to kill you or whatever. You both, they're mid-range decks, and I think a lot of people in card games just enjoy mid-range decks because that lets you kind of play the gamut of fast, aggressive things, fun controlling things in the middle, and there's a little more play to the game interaction between players. Whereas it sounds like with this Mecha Frieza, it's just turn one is my big turn, and if I get my stuff, then you're in a bad position.
Yeah, it was borderline Yu-Gi-Oh levels of solitaire.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Yu-Gi-Oh is a game that has definitely been defined at many points by have metagames that are defined by particular decks as well, and those decks are like first turn kill, one turn kill decks, and if you can't interact with them, which in Yu-Gi-Oh, because I'd say about halfway through the game's current lifespan, they started adding more like interaction from hand, so that you could just go, oh, discard this, stop your thing. But
hand traps.
The majority of interaction is you had to have a turn first to put a trap down, which I think we talked about the last one is a mechanic I really like, but it means that if the deck is pushing, if the game is pushing really aggressive one-turn things, then you can't really interact with them.
Yeah.
So,
Don't get a turn.
So, I mean, that's a great horror story to bring up, Kevin, because I think everyone listening who has played a TCG for a long time can cite at least one metagame in a game where they've thought, man, this just is not good. We need something to happen. If
Black
you played
Krill and
Magic
Blue Piccolo?
recently, yeah, I was going to bring that up. If you played Magic recently, they've had to ban some things pretty quickly because some things have gotten off the rails a little bit, and there have been some. Although I wouldn't say those were as oppressive as this Mecha Frieza meta, but like there's still things that crop up that are like, man, I just like as soon as they drop that Omnath or whatever, I'm pretty much out of the game if I can't answer it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jordan, you go ahead and talk about Namekian Piccolo if you want.
Actually, I didn't have too much of a problem with the Namekian Piccolo. It was the blue Piccolo, because Namekian Piccolo, it wasn't the best to play against, and it was a good deck, but it was at least fun to play against. Like they actually did stuff, unless you're Chris Danzel, #called out. Then you just enter combat with blocks in your hand and wait for the opponent to do stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
This is we're talking about Panini Dragon Ball Z, to clarify. And I want to check with you, Jordan. Pre-errata, set 1 Namekian.
Oh, that's what you meant. Oh, man. that was bonkers broken.
Very, very difficult to win against with anything that wasn't also Namekian Piccolo.
Unless you're me.
Yeah, and Knowledge Piccolo literally won the Fan Z event yesterday, so that deck is still good.
He's back.
He's back.
He's back, baby.
Yeah, but ever since they errated the mastery, then it, and that's the thing is like a lot of the times when you get these nightmare metagames, if the company's willing to ban or errata, which they should be if they're interested in the health of their game and people playing their game, then usually that'll happen. And Magic has gotten a lot faster at pulling the trigger on banning things recently, but that's largely because people play. A lot of people don't think about this, but with Arena now, people play magnitudes more Magic than they ever used to in the past. You have 1 week. I was kind of at some point I was thinking I want to go like try and run the numbers on this, but I'm pretty sure in 1 week of a set being live these days, you probably have at least the equivalent, if not more, of like an entire like 3-month cycle of gameplay, tournament gameplay because of Arena and Magic Online. And then you used to.
Yeah, they get so much data.
So it's really easy to go after a week and be like, well, okay, it looks like Omnath is pretty busted. Whereas like before they would have been like, the next set would have been coming out. They've been like, oh, we really should think about like banning this maybe, or like, let's make sure an answer is in the next set. But you can't have people playing that much Magic for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks with this card that's being oppressive and creating a nightmare.
It's also important to note that with something like that, it's very beneficial as well because there's no condensed clustered meta. Like before, people generally played a bulk of their games or tournament games like near where they're at. So sometimes there would be metas that wouldn't appear, not because they aren't good, but just because people aren't playing them and they could be a problem. It's just not everyone. But with something like online, you're getting the whole world together. Yeah. So like the things that are really oppressive will rise to the top a lot faster than if you have a bunch of spotty people that are like, well, these people just don't play black, so they're skewing the results of what that obscene black deck it may or may not be doing.
Absolutely.
The cream rises to the top.
Generally, they make their changes when it comes to erratas and bans on big tournaments because of that. Like the players that are willing to travel, that's when they say, "Oh, something bad's going on." But with Magic, with online, like you're finding that out in less than a week. You're like, "Oh, this is bad news." So
yeah, and like Black Krillin is the one that's probably the least fun to play on the Panini, just because he has amazing fun mechanics. Like you can't do anything about this attack, and you discard your hand. Fun.
Yeah, and they screwed up the printing because his promo leader was different than the normal one, and that's what made it busted. And they never fixed it.
Yeah. Actually, I think you're bringing up a great topic I want to talk about too. We can transition to another nightmare element of card games, but a lot of card games have, again, we're going to go back to like standing on the shoulders of giants here, because Magic has worked to eliminate mechanics like this pretty frequently, but not necessarily eliminate, but depower or shift when they can be played. But a lot of card games feature mechanics where you get to basically stop your opponent from playing the game. And in measure, those are great. But when they're a little too much gets through the filter, right? Or they get a little too soon, or they hit a critical mass or something, discard decks, mana control, energy control decks, whatever, that kind of stuff, where your whole strategy is you don't get to play anymore, I'm just going to play and I'll win eventually. Those are generally thought of by people as the least fun mechanics in a card game to be able to play, because if people are playing a card game, they want to play cards,
Shocker.
That's 100% true.
I was one of those mean people in Magic where I had a black discard deck in like the prime. And I felt disgusting, so I stopped playing it, and then I did something arguably worse. And because me and my friends' kitchen table, this is before Modern became a thing, we were essentially playing Modern, because we would buy cards after they dropped out of Standard, because it was more affordable for us. We couldn't buy a lot of cards. Yep. But so we just played with whatever cards were in our collections, and I built a blue deck where every card except for the mana had the words counter on it somewhere, and not add counters, like counter a spell. And there was a bunch of mean ones that like counter a spell and like play a copy of that creature and like do a bunch of this stuff. So every card was just like counter, so my opponent just literally didn't get to play anything ever. And it was, I felt bad, and then I dismantled that deck.
Mike, your Fuzamasu deck feels like it's sort of leaning towards this area in Dragon Ball Super where you just stop your opponent's attacks constantly, or like the new SS4 Vegeta, right? Who's like your whole deck is negate attack, counterplay, whatever.
That's the baby Vegeta, where it's just
baby Vegeta. Sorry,
I'm not going to let you play. I'm just going to shut you down, and then
the deck.
Yeah, just control decks. There are counters to them, though.
Absolutely.
There are counters to them, because otherwise, if there wasn't, that deck would be constantly winning. And I mean, super aggro, if you can get them before they even have a chance to get started, or even like some of your mid-range, like I know Gotenks is doing really well, because they get out that Cell Zeno and they just say, "Oh, I get to rip 3 cards from your hand," and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't deflect it. You can't do anything. I just get to rip 3 cards. So
I remember when I played Star Wars Destiny for a hot minute that mill decks in that game were the worst.
Yeah,
they were
mill
not fun.
Was so oppressive in that game.
I agree with you completely, Kevin. Destiny was a game that used a 30-card deck. First of all,
oh no!
Well, your card draw was a lot smaller, right?
Well, no, but with mill deck, that's
right.
mean.
And, it's all in measure, right? So it's not like they had a card that's like mill 10. That wasn't a thing that happened. But you had characters who had dice sides that just allowed you to, and abilities that just allowed you to incrementally mill a card here, a card there, whatever, and you just kind of ground out the game and stayed alive. And that's the exact kind of thing that people really dislike playing against. And Destiny just had it a little overtuned.
I think any deck that wins by not losing is the worst to play against.
Janimba. Janemba.
Yeah, exactly.
People hate Janemba and DBS too. It's like people just want to, like I said, play the game. And when you sit there and go, nah, I'm just gonna. Eventually, I'll win if you just sit here. That's not exciting or fun.
That's your job to beat me. It's like I'm just gonna sit here and eventually I'll get you. So it's just
slightly off topic, but that's interesting
because pass.
One of the like fundamentals in my brain when I play card games is don't play to win, play to not lose, and that carries over from my RTS background because that's what a lot of RTS players do. Is like everyone. They say that like you'll lose an RTS mainly because you're trying too hard to win and not focusing on what you need to do to not lose. So like I brought that over to my card games. So, like when I approach card games too, I don't get me wrong, I like to win and I try to win, but like if my back's against the wall, I'm not trying to figure out how I can beat them quickly. I'm trying to figure out how to not lose to them immediately at all times.
Like they run out of resources. And if you're prepared for that long game, yep.
And a perfect. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I would say perfect example, and take a shot because I'm going to talk about fighting games, is the best strategies in fighting games, especially really hyper-aggressive ones like Marvel, is not letting your opponent play. Virgil, 0. That's why they jokingly refer to it as a single-player game, or, oh, it's 0, time to watch a movie until you die.
You know, and that's a great example, too. And I just wanted to piggyback off of this because, Jordan, I think that's really fantastic advice. But one thing that people have to be aware of is what your means of doing is to not lose, because this is where it's a trap that a lot of people who get into Magic early fall into, where they look at life gain spells and they're like, oh, man, I'm going to stay alive and then I'll win. And the thing is, you still have to win the game at some point, right? Like, it doesn't do you any good to sit there and
they're not going to die on their own.
Right.
So Magic, there's no alternate win con? Like,
well, they can mill out, I guess, but like, it's in Magic, that's going to take so long if you're not actively trying to make it happen that your opponent will eventually win. And that comes down to the fact that creatures in this game are free value towards winning the game every time they get to crack in and attack. So like if I'm playing a life gain deck and I play my spell, I gain 5 life. My opponent puts down a 1/1 creature and hits me 5 times with it, they've negated my card, but that creature still exists. If they put down a 5/5 creature and hit me once and then hit me a second time, now they're like a card ahead if we're comparing my life gain card to their damage card, right?
Yeah.
So you can't exactly fight that, but the key is to be thinking about your outs when you're playing and to build decks where your elements of control in the deck will answer the things that will cause you to lose. And that's where I think, Jordan, your advice is golden, to be thinking about that when you're deck building. How can I prevent my opponent from doing the thing that will screw me over? You know?
Funny enough, to kind of call you out, that's a mentality that I learned from you actually when I started playing card games around here, is playing to your outs. And then over the years I've kind of merged my old like RTS mentality and that mentality into a like fine middle ground.
I think people should definitely take that advice and think about things from that angle. So
and then thinking clearly and knowing when to pivot from find your out and win, and then transition back into like play to not lose. Like it'll shift back and forth over the course of a game. You got to know when to like switch modes essentially.
That's the TCG game sense.
You know what? I'm just going to collect all 7 Dragon Balls. We'll just do that.
Yeah, that was kind of my problem in the last retro event with my Earth Terry deck. It was great at not dying, not so great at winning.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually made... Yeah, with the Fuse the Mossy deck, I had to do that. It was great at surviving, but then I was sitting there asking myself, I'm like, do I have a win con? And I'm like, not really. So I had to really make adjustments and put a win con in there. Because like, I'm great at surviving. Oh, geez, those Argo decks? Oh yeah, it's going to be a 30, 40-minute match. But I'm like, in the end, what do I have to push for game? Right. So I had to make quite a few adjustments to it. I was like, all right, well, let's add this, take this out, and yeah. So
exactly.
Okay, I want to transition us a little bit because I know we guys have some more spooky type stories to tell here, and I think Jordan wanted to talk about an interesting topic, which is nightmare trades.
Yes. So I'm going to call out Dan yet again because it was one of the worst trades I've ever done in history. But at the time, it seemed like a good idea. So the the topic I want to bring up is the nightmare of trading before cards really have a settled value. So this was set 1 Panini DBZ. It's a Wild West. It's literally like, I think it was like a weekend. We were playing. I opened a Heroic Energy Sphere, and Dan wanted a Heroic Energy Sphere, and I kind of was looking more at the Heroic Plan, or what was it? What was it?
Heroic Plan.
Heroic Plan?
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, man. And this is before any values. This is before everyone found out that Heroic Energy Sphere was going to be like a $60, $70 card.
No. We played Score. We knew that card was godlike.
Yeah. But it's a new game, and to be fair, the like Goku's Plan or whatever in the Score game was also real good, but there wasn't the cards to support it in the Panini game, so it wasn't as good. But at the time, we were both just like, they're both ultra rares, sounds good to me. So we did the 1-for-1 trade.
The old 1-for-1.
Fast forward to like 2 weeks later, and I'm like, oh no, what did I do? And it made it even worse that to this day, I have never pulled a Heroic Energy Sphere. I've pulled some villainous ones and some other stuff, but I never again got another Heroic Energy Sphere. I had to buy them.
I have only ever owned one in my life.
I had to buy 2, and here's the 2-part to this horror story. I bought them a week before the game was announced dead.
Oh no!
Granted,
was it the set 7 reprint ones?
It was, but here's the thing. I was like, oh, this is a great deal, because the guy was giving me like, I think he had too many, and he was just like, I just, need money for whatever. So he was giving them to me for $40 a piece. So I was like, this is $20 off the regular? Awesome. And then a week and a half later, the game dies and the price plummets to like $15 a piece.
Yep.
That is definitely spooky. I'm spooked just hearing that story.
And yeah, that's actually why, Dan, if you noticed, like after a new set of anything comes out, any big cards, I don't really trade right away. I'm like, I'll wait a little bit just because I want to make sure I don't make the same mistake.
Yeah,
especially in games where the prices swing so wildly, like DBS. Like you really got to hold on to stuff to see where it lands.
Yeah, one of the biggest biggest suggestions I have is buy cards when they're super cheap. If they're really good but they don't have no support for it, buy it. Because eventually they will get support and they will go up. Like, I still remember, to this day, when I was at regionals, or not nationals, Dragon Ball Super Nationals, and I was doing the video for MetaManiacs. I was like, hey, I'm at Nationals. They had the apes, the apes to draw you to. They were selling them for $15 each.
Oof.
Oh my god.
They're still $80 cards, is that right?
They're still $80 cards. They went down a little bit. They were like 120, 130, but $15 each, and it's a lot. If the thing is, you just got to ask yourself, you're like, is this a good card? Yes. Maybe it doesn't have the support for it now, but is it going to get there? Then buy it. Like, so.
Especially things that are just so generically good that you can plug into any deck and they work.
Yeah. That's part of the reasons I picked up some of the key, they're still kind of high priced now in UFS, but I was bargain hunting for them. I've got my playset of Nutcrackers and Ghost Thief Funerals. I think I got them both around like $30 a card, which is a great price even now. But the reason why I wanted to get them for sure is because I know when MHA hits and the new Street Fighter set hits and the Yu Yu Hakusho second set drops, they're probably going to skyrocket, because I can already see Midoriya. Everyone's going to be like, gotta run Nutcrackers. Oh, snap. And there's going to be...
That is
Fighter set?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Last Friday, Jason said that there's a Street Fighter set coming. He didn't say when. He just said it's coming.
I missed that.
Oh, snap. He did?
Yeah, he mentioned Street Fighter.
Not the miniature game, UFS.
Yes, he mentioned there's a Street Fighter set. He also confirmed that the Dark Tournament set for Yu Yu Hakusho is coming. He said soon, and then immediately after saying soon, he said, not too soon, though, because there's at least 1 or 2 sets that'll come out before it.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
I really also put some Street Fighter 5 characters in there. I want to play G so bad.
Since we're here, I'll just drop it because I know you probably didn't hear it then. He also said there's a very good chance they're going to drop a set before the end of the year. Since My Hero isn't coming, it'll probably be Red Horizon. But it could also be Street Fighter. I don't know how long they are on it, but
I think they've been working on Red Horizon for a while, so it's probably that.
Yeah.
But that's awesome here. And yeah, that's the same reason that like a year ago I got my Nutcrackers specifically for Deku.
Yeah, because I know the price is going to jump up, because Deku and like All Might for sure are probably going to be like clutch Nutcracker users, and it's going to be bonkers, and it's going to skyrocket in price. So I'm like, better pick this up. And then Ghost Thief.
You got to hold on to your nuts.
And Ghost Thief is a really good card too, and I imagine someone's going to use, something with it. It's just a bonkers card on its own. So.
Well, I personally am excited for that Yu Yu Hakusho Dark Tournament set, even though I still haven't gotten that far in the anime.
I'm so hyped for it.
I've enjoyed what we've seen so far.
Oh my god. The Dark Tournament is like one of the best arcs in all of anime, period.
I've
gold.
heard that from multiple people. We're definitely going to get to it at some point. I've liked the show so far. It's nice, classic anime with a
Shoujo.
kind of a spooky theme, which is
shonen.
Fun. And
shonen. Yeah, sorry, not shoujo.
I want to use this as a pivot to talk about spooky themes in card games that you guys have liked. So obviously, like, I feel like Yu Yu Hakusho, even though it isn't like horror exactly, it's themed around death and demons and everything, and it really fits the bill well. And another one I want to bring up. So I guess I would just want to say, if you're looking to build a fun Halloween themed deck for something, check out Universes. Check out the Yu Yu Hakusho set that's currently out there, because you can definitely get some cool stuff in there.
And the Darkstalkers characters are based off classic monsters.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Actually, I know so little about Darkstalkers that I never even really realized that. But now that you mention that, I'm just thinking about the ones I've seen in the game, and that makes sense.
Yeah, like, I love that franchise, Darkstalkers 4 When, but yeah, most of them are based off classic monsters.
Yep, like the Yeti, vampire, Frankenstein, werewolf.
That's cool. The name makes sense now too. Dark. I don't know why I never even put the two together. But do you guys have any other card game themes that are spooky that you like?
Yeah. There's the very little known unreleased Dracula set for the Metacross card game.
We have some files for a fan set. Yes.
Wait, what?
That's interesting.
We've talked about it a little bit, but not on the podcast or anything. If we ever get around to it, we might. I would basically want to commission some art and stuff, but we might put out a fan set for Metacross for which is like. But I say fan set. It would be. I've talked to Richie, the lead developer, about vetting it a little bit, and it would be mostly designed by me and tested in-house, and I was on the development team. So it would be. I definitely classify it as a fan set because I can't take control of it or anything, but it's kind of closer to a real set, but no promises on when or if we'll get to that, but we have some preliminary work done on it.
Nice.
And I like Dracula. I like gothic horror, so that was my pick.
No, mine is spooky stories is what I've got.
Well, okay. Well, let's talk about some card game themes first. I know Kevin's got some, and then we'll get to that.
Yeah, the two that I picked, and I know we always josh around and poke fun at Yu-Gi-Oh, but it was my first real card game, so it does have a place in my heart, and I still do like the game, and I still observe it from afar. And but one of my favorite decks when I was actually actively playing the game when I was a lot younger was zombies. I loved zombie decks, and it was one of those few early decks where if you got 3 of the structured decks, you had a pretty solid deck, because there were some good starter decks back then.
That's the starter deck that had Vampire Lord in it, and that was right after they made Gemini monsters, and Zombie Master was the key that made that deck work, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
So the deck was really fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was very on theme. Of course, the zombies would come back from the graveyard, so I loved that. And then, not really a specific archetype, but as someone who loves horror, I've always loved the black color in Magic. Whether it's zombies, vampires, unknown Cthulhu-type monsters, it's always been my favorite color in Magic.
Yeah, they especially early on, they leaned into the horror really hard. You had cards like the Cyclopean Tomb, and you had you had Cthulhu-like monsters as their demons and stuff, and more classic Christian style demons or whatever.
Yeah, when I think we talked about it the other week, I started playing when I was really young when 7th edition came out, and that was when they really had, like, especially for Black, really gross and creepy, like almost like scary stories to tell in the dark, if anyone remembers that book and those awesome illustrations that they had in there. Mm-hmm. It was very reminiscent of that.
I think Magic they've flirted with, just like Black has been the horror theme for a long time, but then when they produced the set Innistrad, they did the Innistrad block and the Innistrad plane, that was I think that was an extremely well liked setting for them to go. But that's where they took all 5 colors and put them into a gothic horror setting, and they completely nailed it. In my opinion, they had obviously black and also blue were zombies, where they had blue like mad wizards and stuff creating like Frankenstein monsters and blue also was getting into that kind of Cthulhu mythos with like Thing from the Deep and everything. Blue and white went heavy into ghosts and spirits, which made perfect sense with them. And the big trick that kind of made them pull it all off was they introduced these transforming cards. So they had a card on either side. And since then, that's become basically like an evergreen mechanic that's come back every now and then in a new form. And when they introduced this, then they had werewolves that were like a human on one side. And it was like, this is, in my opinion, one of the most like clean, elegant, genius systems for creating the flavor of the werewolf becoming a werewolf at night or whatever, in that all of these werewolves had a mechanic on the front that said, if at the end of a turn no spells were cast, you flip it to its werewolf side. So effectively, it's nighttime. Nobody's doing anything. So now they flip to their werewolf side. And then if at the end of a turn on their werewolf side, if 2 or more spells were cast, that means everyone's awake and doing things. And then you flip them back to their other side.
The sun went up.
Yeah, exactly. And it was such a neat way of just like exploring that flavor. But then when you're playing, it introduced such an interesting mechanic of like, you'd cast your werewolf dude. Then your next turn would go, you'd be like, okay, I have 2 options. 1, I can continue casting stuff. 2, I can do nothing. And then he'll flip to his stronger form. But I have to be careful, because then if my opponent casts a couple of things, then they can flip him back. But maybe they don't have 2 things to cast, but then, and maybe it's just worth like getting the stronger thing now and saving my stuff for later. So I think they pulled off both flavor and mechanics beautifully with that entire set, really. So that, in my opinion, if I'm thinking about a premier example of like fitting horror into a card game, it's Innistrad, which for anyone interested is coming back to Magic around Halloween of next year, when they're returning to Innistrad. And they're splitting it into 2 sets. One that's focused on vampires and one that's focused on werewolves. I forgot to say vampires were black-red in that set too. So they had vampires, ghosts, zombies, werewolves. They had everything. So it's very cool.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, I'm excited for that new set, because I do play on Arena.
Yeah. I've been playing Arena since our Arena podcast. Just played it this morning and everything. Got my daily stuff done, but really looking forward to seeing kind of what they do when they return to that sort of fan favorite set. The last time they returned to it, actually, they at some point Magic created their own Cthulhu mythos, effectively, with the Eldrazi, which are these like colorless monstrosities from beyond time that like have come in and they cause insanity and madness. So they're very Lovecraftian, exactly what they're trying to do. And then when they returned to Innistrad the first time, they merged the Eldrazi into the Innistrad storyline. So it was stuff plus like doubling down on Cthulhu, right? And I think they ended it by like having a planeswalker put Emrakul, the big one, in the moon, like sealed him in the moon there or something. So and it's starting to get like Dragon Ball Z now, but maybe someone's going to blow up the moon. I don't know.
Yeah, if you're a fan of that kind of cosmic horror stuff, I cannot recommend any higher The Color Out of Space starring Nicolas Cage, which is based on a Lovecraft short story. It's really good.
Yeah, I've heard that's a great movie, and his acting is like very impressive in the movie.
Now that he doesn't owe the IRS a bunch of money, he can actually pick his scripts. He's having like a second renaissance, and as someone who is a huge Cage fan, I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay, well, anyone have any other like horror themes and card games you want to add? It's tough when Mike you play like Dragon Ball Z games and it's like Dragon Ball has like the mummy bandages, right?
Yeah.
And the Baba the Witch and stuff. That's okay, not a lot there though.
There's Gotenks Ghosts.
That's true.
Hey.
That's another one. Mike, let's close this off. You had a few stories you wanted to tell, so let's. I know you got to go in a few minutes, so we're going to wrap this up. But go ahead and give us your favorite story, horror story, to close out the podcast.
I've got two.
Okay.
So the first one, I don't know if I've ever told you guys this one, but it was at a Panini, not a Panini Z, but it was at a Score Z event. It was when I first started going to major events, and it was actually at Worlds. And
Black
when
Cat.
I had my deck there,
Spooky Black Cat.
Black Kitty. I had a Goku freestyle deck. And I love playing my Goku freestyle deck. Well, one of the things that it was my first major event, and what you learn is you really need to keep an eye on your cards. Because before, like it was just like it was about an hour or two before the world tournament actually started. My deck was stolen. The good news was the community came together really quick and literally went to players and rebuilt my deck in about an hour. And a lot of people just donated cards. Even like some of the ultra rare cards, just like huge discounts. Like they were maybe like a $75 card. They gave it to me for like $25 is what it came to. So literally, I think I only lost out on like $100. Had my deck rebuilt. So that was a really bad horror story, but it was an experience, and I learned it's like you gotta keep an eye on your cards. You go to an event, make sure you keep an eye on your stuff that's with you. Like that's why I got like my backpack and all that good stuff. So that's
not how those stories end most of the time. Usually it's I lost my deck and it's gone.
Yep.
Horror movies don't usually have happy endings.
Yeah.
Now the second horror story, I've said this a few times, but it is a horror story, but in the end, it was a great experience, and that's when I was at Kansas City, and I was in the top cut. Yeah, you guys are laughing. Laughing up. Laughing up.
We have definitely told the story a few times on the podcast now.
Top cut, man. Top cut, and I was just, I had my blue Roshi deck, and I was just controlling that match. Oh, man, everything was, I was laying my Dragon Balls, like I was stealing his balls, and I mean, I was just thinking to myself, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when I win this match. And I'm just, just total control against this Piccolo Namekian
feeling himself.
deck. Yeah, Piccolo Namekian deck. And then it starts getting to time. I think we got like one more round. And I mean, I'm looking right at my hand. Like, I've got the win right there. Like, I have the, where I can, with Roshi, like you use an energy, you shuffle it in your deck, and then you rejuvenate another card, put the pressure on my opponent. Nope, I just sat there and passed like a dummy for 4 turns. I'm not going to do a darn thing because I'm afraid he's going to have some unknown card that can just, he's going to play it and go, I win. So I'm just like, nope, I don't need to do anything. Well, I was wrong, and Rich Bondi got a call out, and just played it to a T. And then after we were done, we counted our life decks, and I was one card less.
Is the tiebreaker.
Yep.
You hate to see that kind of thing happen.
One card, and he won. And I remember, I just did, and we looked at each other, and I just told him, I said, dude, you outplayed me. You literally stared me down like I thought for sure. I was like, I got this. You got to beat me. I got to beat you. And he beat me. And I'm just like, I just remember looking at Dan and just shaking his head and looking down. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I just.
Jordan, do you think Mike failed to transition there from not losing the game to winning the game?
That is correct.
Yeah,
bring that back a little.
That's what that was, and I was like, lesson learned. That was a lot of fun though. I married my wife that weekend. Well, I asked her to marry me that weekend. Kansas City was great, but that story, hey, I still have them on Facebook, and it's like that. I just every time I'm like, man, if I just would have threw out that energy attack and then shuffled in, and that's all I needed to do. That's all I needed to do. Is do that. I mean, just threw that attack out. I just need to throw one attack out, but
almost got him.
Yep.
Well, boys, I think that will be a succinct wrap to a fun little episode talking about our horror stories and favorite horror themes in card games. Want to thank you guys all for listening to the MetaManiacs Show. Now, if you are listening to this the week it comes out, the next week we will actually be off a little bit. It's a big week for me as I'm moving into a new house. So we're going to be very busy, and we're just going to kind of try and ease my move a little bit there. But the following week, I don't know what my setup's going to look like, but we are going to try our very best to be back at that point. So again, thank you guys for listening. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform so you always catch when a new episode of the MetaManiacs Show comes out. If you are a Patreon supporter, or if you want to become one, we are going to be putting up a bonus episode for this month, this week as well. So make sure to... Oh my God, my cat is going wild right now. I'm pushing my camera everywhere.
Ooh, scary.
It's a poltergeist.
Yeah, make sure you join us on Patreon for as low as $2 a month if you want to get access to the bonus episodes and all that kind of good stuff. And otherwise, if you don't, that's all good too. We really appreciate you being here. And stay tuned for more TCG goodness on MetaManiacs and with the MetaManiacs Show. Take care, guys.
Stay tuned for season 2. There we go.
Bye.
Welcome to Prime Time.
Bye.